Hello and welcome to the review for Matthew Perry's Friend Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing. This was one of my. I haven't read many biographies. I can't remember one. I think I read Michelle Obama's Becoming or something like that, but I haven't read a lot of them. So this was definitely a different experience because I'm usually reading like stories and things like that. A biography is quite out there for me, but I was in the bookstore. It was there. I read a while ago. I was like, okay, let me write my thoughts about it. I want to be very clear that this is my thoughts only on the book. I don't want anyone to be like, "Oh, you're saying this negative or you're saying this positive." I am saying this as a reading experience. That is all this review is about. It's about the book as you read it, and I'll be mentioning like my thoughts as like a Friends fan. So yeah, when let's start with the good stuff. Let's start with the good. Firstly, I liked a lot of the beginning. I'm not saying I didn't like anything else, but I liked the beginning when you see his growing up in his childhood, his relationship with his parents. Like I think both his parents were like celebrities. He mentioned his mom was like really pretty. I forgot exactly what she said, but he mentioned like she's really pretty. His dad's really good looking and charming, and he talks about that a lot. And that was really cool to see, the way our parents influence us. Because he did grow up to be a very charismatic actor, and you can see, like, he says, I learned so much from my parents, and you can see it with his relationship between them. Of course, it's very tumultuous as well. I think they are, again, I read it a little while ago, but I'm pretty sure they got divorced, and there's a lot of, like, trouble for him. But it is interesting to see that his early career, his relationship with his parents, the people who influenced him, I like that a lot. And speaking of that, he does talk about other celebrities, like he mentioned. So you get a little bit about them, like Bruce Willis. He talks about how hard he partied. He talks about his relationship with Julia Roberts. There's a little bit more of that as well. I don't want to give you everything, but it's nice. Like he mentions how he is connected to these other people. So I enjoyed that as well. It's pretty cool. You don't get a lot of Friends stuff. If you're buying this as a Friends book, you're like, I want to get a lot of Friends info. You're not gonna get here. You're gonna get like 8-10 pages of Friends stuff out of a book this thick, which is like how many pages is it? This is it's like 250 pages. So you're gonna get like maybe 10. There he talks a lot about like getting into the show, the benefits of the show, like the success, things like that. But he doesn't tell you like, oh, there was one time they forgot to bring me iced lemon tea or something like. There's not much of that. There's very little. So if you're looking for like more info about what happened in Friends and behind the scenes and his relationship with the actors there, it's not a whole lot. There is some of it, like it mentions early on, like he would, like some of the actors would come to him for advice, and then he felt like they were growing so well, and then he had to ask them for advice. He mentions a couple of times like problems that he had, they'd help him out with him. Like there is some of it, but it's very small. So don't buy this if you're thinking I'm gonna get a lot of Friends info. You're not. Um, the last thing I really liked about this book is that you really get a huge insight into his psychology, into like how he grew up, into how he sees the world. And he not only talks about, like, he talks about his drug and alcohol addiction, and he talks about how he learns from it. It's very like visceral, it's very visual the way he describes his feelings. And you get not only that, but you also get like some pictures. The book comes with some pictures. I don't know if you guys you can see it, like childhood pictures where he talks about his family, showcases things like that, moments from his life. It's really cool. This is like another one. So there's like a good amount of pictures about this, so which is nice. Like I really appreciate getting to see the people he's talking about. Again, I don't read a lot of biographies. Maybe that's common. But yeah, there's good positives here. There's definitely something to enjoy. But let's talk about the mix. I'm not gonna say anything, Mac, but I'm gonna talk about the mix stuff. Now, I mentioned it just now that he does talk about, like, we talk about his psychology. He talks about his addiction to drugs and alcohol. Now, this is interesting. It is cool to not cool to see. I mean, but it is fascinating to see someone describe how they go through it and the way they deal with it, and like how they try to recover, how people help them, and how you can see some people are like, yo, maybe that person wasn't the best influence for you at the time. And that is cool to see. But unfortunately, this is not a story. This is someone's real life, and it keeps the rehab into relapse. It happens a lot in this book. Like the last, I'd say like 50 pages are almost all about drugs, and there's a lot of it scattered throughout. And when you read it, it's like, I wish you could just recover. But as a human, that's what you want. But also as a reader, you're like, I feel like I've seen this before. I've seen you do this before and go through it. And I've seen you do it again, and then you see it again. So you don't get a whole lot of insight that's different each time. It's kind of the same stuff happening again and again. And again, some people might say, oh, that's fine. Like, this is what I want. This is like, I want to know this. And some people, as me, as a reader, I'm like, I've seen this before, but it doesn't get as interesting for me the fourth, fifth, sixth time. Again, this is criticism of the book. I'll be very clear. This is just how I see the book. And I know some people will be like, well, that's what it's about. And like, I get it. But for people who haven't read, I just want you to go in knowing this. And this is it's a sad book. It's a heavy, sad book. There are lighthearted moments and some, victories but it is a sad overall book. It's a bit bleak because of the strength. Like, we know, if you've, like, you follow, that drugs and alcohol were such a big addiction his whole life. And so it is sad to see it the way he describes it as well. This is a mix. I'm not saying this is bad or good. I'm saying that you should know this going in. And as I mentioned before, there's very little friends. I was hoping for a bit more. I mean, I read this hoping for like a bit more of that. It is a biography. I wasn't aware, but again, I would have liked a bit more, but it's fine. And I just want to go that, like, when the story ends, you feel like it's a little hopeful. And I mentioned, if I wish it was hopeful. It is a hopeful ending, but then you know what happens in real life and you feel worse somehow that it's hopeful ending, because you're like, when you go from normal to sad, okay, but when you go from happy to sad, that's a bigger drop. And that's why when you finish the book, you're like, oh, he was feeling good. And then unfortunately that's what happened. So yeah, that's hard for me when I finished it. But overall, the book, do I like it? Do I recommend it? Do I think you should read it? Okay, if you are really, like, you really want to know more about Matthew Perry, sure, you can get the book. If you really have like an interest in addiction, in the way these like very famous actors were thinking, things like that, buy it as well. But if you're looking for something sort of entertaining, something about friends, something that's a bit more lighthearted, I would not recommend this book to you. Like, this goes into kind of not a niche group of people, but a very specific group of people. You have to either really like Matthew Perry as himself, like in other roles and things like that, not just Matthew Perry as Chandler. You have to, then it's worth it. If you want to know more about, like addiction and that, also buy it. But other than that, I would say don't, like, it's not for you. I'm saying it's a bad book. I kind of enjoyed my time, but I'm saying that you should know this. And overall, solid, but for very specific people to read. And I hope you enjoyed this review. And by the way, I've changed the setup. I don't know if this is better or worse, but let me know. I would appreciate any feedback. So thank you for your time. See you around.